Well, we heard from the archivists that every administration since Reagan has delivered to them documents that included classified and unclassified documents mixed. This is a systemic problem. Now, with respect to this litigation, it's going to go forward, and I'm certainly not going to defend the behavior that is listed in that complaint. But they're going to have to prove it, and it's a legal process that's going to have to go forward.
It's new word today from Intelligence Committee Chair Mike Turner as other Republicans ramp up attacks on the Department of Justice. But a new analysis in the Washington Post says the right argues that DOJ is biased so it can make DOJ biased. Citing Trump has now pledged to appoint a special counsel of his own to investigate President Biden. Joining me now is Massachusetts Congressman Jake Auchincloss, a Democratic member of the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, as well as the Select Committee on China. I welcome you and wish you a happy Father's Day, and thank you for joining us and taking time away from your family. But let's get into this, Congressman. What you just heard there from Mike Turner, is that how you see what's behind Republicans attacking the DOJ? That and that headline?
Representative Turner, unfortunately, does not speak for the median House GOP member. Representative Turner is cautiously towing the line on supporting due process under law. Too many GOP members of the House and Senate are just defaming and undermining the Department of Justice. And at the same time, Alex, they are increasingly hawkish on China. And what I would say to them is one of the big differences between the United States and China is the rule of law. Here in the United States, we swear an oath to the Constitution. In China, they swear an oath to support a party. And these GOP members are going to have to decide, do they bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution or to their party or to Donald Trump in particular? Because if it's to the Constitution, then they should be saying that they support due process under law. And if it's to Donald Trump, then frankly, I don't see much daylight between how they're acting and how they're criticizing the CCP from acting.
Interesting. As you know, President Biden has told White House aides and his reelection team to say nothing about Trump's legal troubles. Do you think he is making the right call, or is he missing an opportunity to hit Trump?
Well, as you know, there's a firewall between the White House and the Department of Justice. Americans would be forgiven for forgetting that under the Trump administration, but President Biden respects it, and he wants to let the due process of law carry forward without political interference. And that's what all members of Congress should be doing. They should be saying a jury of his peers found that there was sufficient evidence to issue an indictment. He's going to have another chance in the court of law to prove his case, both on facts and on law. And we should allow this process to proceed without elected officials campaigning on it in order to win votes and with their primary base. It's reprehensible that members of Congress or other GOP elected officials would try to denigrate and degrade the rule of law, one of our most precious institutions in this country, just to curry favor with the would-be tyrant from Mar-a-Lago.
Let's go back to the breaking news. As you know, Secretary of State Antony Blinken right there in China right now. His trip was delayed after that China spy balloon incident, and it comes amid heightened tension, certainly. What do you hope comes from this visit?
Well, Secretary Blinken is traveling to China right now in a position of strength. We're stronger in the Indo-Pacific relative to China than we were 6 months ago, thanks to key deals with Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, India, Australia. We are establishing that we're going to have a strong presence in the Indo-Pacific for a generation to come. We're stronger militarily than we were because we've continued to put Russia on a path towards strategic defeat in Ukraine. Russia, of course, is China's no-limit friend. And finally, we're stronger economically right now relative to China. We've had 13 million jobs created over the last 2.5 years, 10 months straight of inflation going down. China, meanwhile, is having a very hard time reopening. They're seeing high youth unemployment. They're seeing lower GDP growth. I think Secretary Blinken needs to take those strengths and needs to speak from a position of strength to indicate that the United States is not going anywhere. We are going to be in the Indo-Pacific. We are going to be supporting the rules-based international order. And while we welcome dialogue with the CCP on issues like public health and climate change and debt deals for the emerging economies, we're not going to sacrifice our values or priorities.
Speaking of dialogue, NBC News exclusively learned that President Biden wanted to speak with President Xi after the balloon saga, but his top national security advisors talked him out of it. Yesterday, Biden suggested the balloon was not sent on purpose.
I think one of the things that balloon caused was not so much that it got shot down, but I don't think the leadership knew where it was and knew what was in it and knew what was going on. I think it was more embarrassing than it was intentional. And so I'm hoping that over the next several months, I'll be meeting with Xi again and talking about legitimate differences we have, but also how there's areas we can get along.
Congressman, do you believe Xi didn't know the balloon was in U.S. airspace and what its capabilities were? I mean, is the president at all softening his tone on China? And would that be a bad thing or a good thing?
I haven't seen the same national security briefings that the president gets, but his interpretation does accord with the facts that I've seen. I think it's more likely that actually this was about incompetence rather than malintent. And what we saw was our commander-in-chief took decisive action, shot down this balloon, and actually allowed us to be able to recover some sensitive material from their technology, whereas their commander-in-chief didn't even know what the left hand was doing. So again, the United States is in a stronger position relative to China than I think many folks inside the Beltway are indicating in their public communications. Of course, we have to be worried about this near-peer adversary. It's going to be the generational competition for the next 20 years. But at the same time, we should not be frightened into aping the CCP's maneuvers. We should instead double down on our strengths, rule of law, a strong market-oriented economy, our ability to uphold the post-World War II rules-based order. Let's do what we do best and lay down a gauntlet for the CCP.
Well, given your position on the Select Committee on China, your perspective is greatly appreciated. Thank you for sharing it, Congressman Jake Auchincloss.